All right, boys and girls, I can confidently sit here now with all of the research that I've done, the days spending on watching all these players play, that I have done what I believe is a pretty good 2025 AFL mock draft. With all the nerdy ass research that I've done, the hours that I've put into it, I've got a big, long video for you guys here. Video almost as long as a freaking BBC on your favorite video streaming platform. We've got a lot to talk about in today's video. A lot of academy matchings, which have blown my head to try and calculate points, and where if teams are matching a guy, you know, in the top 10, what picks are they losing later on? You guys are going to see all of that and more in this 2025 AFL mock draft. Again, before we do get into it, it would mean a lot if you guys please, you know, left the like on this video to let me know you enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel for all the latest AFL content and news. It would mean a lot because I've been sweating my ass off. If I check my John Cena watch, I've been working on this video for 18 million years, and it's a John Cena watch because you can't see it. You get it? And on my John Cena watch, it also shows the weather, and it's freaking 29 degrees right now, and I'm sweating in places I didn't even know I could sweat. So hopefully you guys enjoy this 2025 AFL mock draft. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it. With me actually having the West Coast Eagles selecting Yuland Dersma, who is now the clear #1 ranked player, and he's the guy I think will be going #1 in the draft to the Eagles. If we actually take a look at what Cal Toomey's had to say about him on his Phantom Form Guide, he actually talks about Yuland Dersma, saying that Dersma continued to perform in his draft campaign and played well in big games throughout the year. The Brendan Goddard-like prospect can play just about anywhere. He flies for marks, takes on kicks, boots goals in big moments, and stepped up when it mattered at under 18 and VFL level late in the season. Dersma is right in the mix to be the #1 pick and is as talented as any in the draft class this year. He finished this year predominantly as a forward and kicked 16 goals for the Power this year. Now again, Yuland Dersma, with how I like him to, I don't mind the Brendan Goddard comparison at all, and I think that's because people actually forget how much of a good player Brendan Goddard was in his prime, and he was definitely a high flyer who moved around the ground, could play midfield, could, you know, play in the back line as well. Very similar to Yuland Dersma, who started off the year, I feel like, mostly in the midfield, but there were times in the middle of the season where he was playing a lot of backline and actually doing the kickouts for his team, but then also playing up and playing some forward as well, kicking 16 goals, which is pretty insane. The guy can legitimately play everywhere outside of ruck. You can play him on the wing, etc. I think this is a clear pick 1 in my opinion to the Eagles. Then with the second overall pick, we have West Coast again, where I do have them selecting Zeke Yuland, and that pick being matched by the Gold Coast Suns. Now, Zeke Yuland is the #2 rated prospect on the Phantom Form Guide in this year's draft as well. The utility player is, of course, attached to the Gold Coast Suns, just most recently playing in their Gold Coast Academy. The brother, of course, of Bodie Yuland, and a guy who, you know, he can play back like his brother. Like, his brother's a really good backman, of course, and I'm pretty sure he even finished second in Gold Coast Best and Fairest, not this year, but last. When we do look at Zeke Yuland, though, I feel like he has more of the ability to play in the midfield. You also see what is being said here. He's 180 centimeters. After his long layoff with stress back fractures, Yuland was keen to get back out onto the field late in the season, which he did for Gold Coast VFL side. While not dominating the class, he left footer had enough moments to remind everyone of his standing in the pecking order of this year's draft after being a bottom-aged All-Australian at under 18s level. The Suns Academy prospect has Errol Goulden traits with his hard running and smart kicking, and can move around the centre square to start his AFL career. Now look, that is true. Zeke Yuland didn't exactly play that great in Gold Coast Academy. Like I do, or well, for the VFL, sorry. Like I remember watching him play in the VFL against Sam Grill, who actually played a lot better than what Zeke Yuland did when it was a Richmond versus Gold Coast game and Sam Grill played for the Tigers. But even though he played better, you saw moments where it just looked like Zeke Yuland was insanely skilled, and a bit more time playing against men, I think this guy could exactly become like an Errol Goulden player. Maybe not on the wing, more of an inside kind of guy who can play off the half-back as well. But he's very penetrating when it does come to his foot skills, and he's going to be another great addition to Gold Coast, and I think he will jump probably in their best 23 straight away. We have the Eagles selecting again, where I have them selecting Daniel Annibal, and that pick being matched by the Brisbane Lions. Annibal, of course, is the 5th ranked player in this draft. Midfielder who plays for the Brisbane Lions Academy as well. Tied to them, can unfortunately not be taken by any teams who are very interested in him. Brisbane are 100% going to match this deal. But it says, aside from the stellar performances over the past 2 years, the capacity to hit targets by hand and foot and step up when his team needs him, Annibal is a draftee with leadership and someone his teammates have followed behind in recent seasons. The Brisbane Academy prospect played in the Lions VFL side in the finals and averaged 21 disposals and nearly 4 tackles across his 8 VFL games. Annibal is a footballer's footballer and is ready to go. So yeah, obviously 21 touches a game is pretty goddamn good, especially for a 17, 18-year-old in the VFL. You definitely will take that. I think the Eagles will see him as a really good prospect and will try and, bid on him. But of course, it will be matched by Brisbane. And I mean, the best team in the AFL only gets stronger. I think they will be getting him with the 3rd overall pick. I know I sound like a broken record here, but yeah, pick 4, West Coast. I do have them selecting Kubuff Tyler, who is the 3rd highest ranked player in this draft. Again, the 200 centimeter ruck/forward has really good traits to be a very good footballer. Is he the best tap ruckman? Probably not. Like that's not his strong suit. But what his strong suit is being a guy who will be a ruck who can play as an extra midfielder, moves around the ground really well, and when he's not playing in the ruck, you don't actually have to put him on the bench. You can actually pinch hit him as a forward, where he can play as an extra key forward. He's kicked multiple goals in multiple games this year in his under-18s competition. Overall, the Eagles definitely need a ruckman. They need a lot of things, but a ruckman is the main thing they need. Bailey Williams is not going to be their future. Matt Flynn isn't going to be their future as well as a ruckman, so they'll definitely need to look around. I think they can go in the draft here and get, obviously, the best ruckman and partner him up with Willem Dersma. So I actually think this is a great decision by them and something they're, of course, going to be looking at. With the 5th overall pick, though, I do have Richmond now, finally a team other than the Eagles. I do have the Richmond Tigers selecting Sullivan Roby, who is the 6th highest ranked player in this draft. A guy who is very new to some of you. A bloke who, like from what I've heard, I know a guy who plays in under 18s, and when Sullivan Roby has come on the scene, he can confirm to me this guy's the real deal and is an absolute great player. He's a bloke who wasn't getting a game like 10 games ago, came in, dominated straight away, played finals and was nearly the best player in the premiership winning team. A midfield/forward who's 192, 193 centimeters tall, with Cal Toomey actually saying the bolter of this year's pack is firmly in the best group of prospects, and it has come from nowhere. After being cut from the Dandenong Stingray squad, Roby burst onto the scene mid-year with the Eastern Rangers. At first, he was a connector at half forward who marked on the lead and was effective around goal. But his past month, Roby has exploded to be a midfielder with burst, size and strength, having amassed 40 disposals and 3 goals against Western Jets and 2 goals and 25 disposals against the Calder Cannons the following week. In the grand final last weekend, which was a little bit ago now, he played predominantly forward and booted 4 goals to show his class in attack. Roby was a lot of clubs' best kept secret, but it's just kept rising and is now well in contention inside the top 10 picks, having been elevated to the National Draft Combine. I mean, yeah, those stats speak for themselves. 4 goals in the freaking grand final, multiple goals in a 40 disposal week. a couple weeks before that. He's the real deal. Again, I know someone who's played on him that says he's the real deal and is a pain in the ass to go up against. He will be a guy I think Richmond will really look at, because I think Richmond desperately need a high half forward, especially one of his size. You know, that Will Hayward, Cam Rayner type of prototype of a player. The third, fourth tall who can move up and down the ground. I think Sullivan, Roby can do that. He can also play midfield, which Richmond are obviously looking to boost. I think it's a great decision by them, and I think it's where they'll go. With the 6th overall pick, though, I have Richmond selecting Dylan Patterson, but will get matched by the Gold Coast Suns, who is ranked 4th. Dylan Patterson, another Gold Coast Academy player, like they just keep dominating. It's 183 centimetre midfielder / defender. The Rocket is the most exciting player in this year's pool. When he's got the ball, it's a must watch. You aren't sure exactly what's coming next with Patterson, because he sometimes makes it up on the go and backs himself with his pure speed and dash. But beyond that, the Suns Academy player understands the game well, sees options, and he can be really important in how to set up the team's attack from halfback or through the midfield. Patterson is dynamic in every sense. The Gold Coast Suns as well, they don't really have too many holes on their team. But one thing is, I think they may be looking for another wing. And Dylan Patterson can play wing. You know, I think Touk Miller will play a lot of wing this year as well. But Patterson can play wing. He can play halfback. A guy who I genuinely think could be in Gold Coast Best 23 coming up as well. It's kind of crazy to think they've got him, Yuland, Petrarca, and Jamara, who could all come straight into that round 23 side. Yeah, they're building big and good things at Gold Coast. With pick number 7, though, I've got Richmond selecting Sam Cumming, who is ranked number 15. The first really big bolter, I think, of this year's draft is Cumming. Of course, 186 centimetre midfield / half forward. When talking about the Tigers earlier as well, I did mention that I think they'll be looking for a new high half forward, as well as looking for midfield depth. The reality is that Richmond really just don't have a high half forward in general. Like, you see a lot of great teams and they all have 2 or 3 elite, you know, forwards who can do that role. Like Brisbane had Cam Rayner and Calamachi, and even when they were playing with the 3 talls down there, Logan Morris was like that type of role, moving up the ground when they had Big O and what's the other dude's name? Ty Gallop. When Ty Gallop and the Big O were playing as the deep forwards, Logan Morris would play as that player as well. I think the Tigers will be looking at that. Their forward line last year, you saw, just got to be way too small. They were playing 4 small forwards at one stage, and I don't think that's where the modern game is going. I think modern teams like to have like 2 small forwards and those 2 high half forwards to maybe play with the 2 key forwards. I feel like that's where the, you know, game is kind of trending, and even that high half forward can kind of be a hybrid of a key forward some teams have, like that Logan Morris. I think the Tigers need to look at that, because the only guy they've got I can think of who could maybe play that role is Sam Lawler. And Sam Lawler will definitely play that role, and he did for a lot of this year. But I think Sam Lawler imagines himself being a midfielder going forward, who probably plays 70% midfield, 30% forward type thing. Very similar to Dusty for a lot of his prime. I think that's what they're going to try and do with Lawler. So if Lawler's doing that and only playing 30% as that forward, you don't have anyone else down there. So I think a Sullivan, Roby, and a Sam Cumming could both be really good at that. Sam Cumming as well is a guy who I think can play a bit of wing, which the Tigers may also be looking at. When it does, describe him, it says that Cumming's season was cut short at the end by a shoulder injury, which came after perhaps his best block of form for this season. He was a consistent member of South Australia's title-winning team, and his size as a midfielder / forward has excited clubs, given he can also mark well for a player his size. 21 disposal and 3 goal game against North Adelaide was one of his best this season. So yeah, I think the Tigers will either look at him here or Sam Grill. But honestly, the Tigers, they do need some forward midfield rotation, because that's another thing Brisbane can do. Like a player like Cam Rayner can jump in the midfield if needed. You know, Kalachi was playing on the wing as well. I think the Tigers may look at that, bring in a guy like Cumming who can play high half forward, can maybe play in the midfield but also play on the wing. Sullivan, Roby, high half forward, a deep option as well, who can play in the midfield. I think it's what the Tigers could be looking at here, and it's why I've got them taking Cumming. But I wouldn't be surprised if they took Grill to get some, you know, burst from the stoppage in there too. So we'll have to see how that one does all unfold. With the 8th overall pick though, I have Essendon selecting Xavier Taylor, the number 7 ranked defender from this year's draft. 191 centimeter defender. He can play big, can play small. Pretty good ball user. Underrated, I think, with his skills when it does come to that. Finished the season off with a bang, being named best of field in the grand final, having 25 disposals and 15 marks across half back. A lot more says on here, but I think Essendon will be looking for like that third tall. You know, they've got Mackay down there. They'll run a couple other defenders down there as well. But they recently did move on Laverde, who at times could play that role. I think Xavier Taylor is not only best available for them here at this pick, but makes a lot of sense when it does come to that, so that's why I like it. With pick number 9 though, I've got Essendon selecting Dyson Sharp, who is also ranked 9. Other than bringing in another backman, they obviously need to improve their midfield, and Dyson Sharp might be the best available midfielder left at this pick. He's 187 centimeters. I think was originally compared a lot to Patrick Dangerfield, or at least that's what I saw when I kind of watched him play. It said it is Sharp's size and strength which gave him the edge this season across all levels he played. The bigger bodied midfielder does what he does. He breaks tackles, he bursts through clearances, he finds the ball and doesn't play many bad games. He was able to put together some promising CFL league games for Central District, having started for South Australia and being named captain of their All-Australian squad. Essendon could also use some leadership here. And if they think Dyson Sharp is a good quality leader to come in, he could be a nice option. Thing with Sharp is as well, he can also play wing and half back, which is cool to have that versatility and movement. Honestly, I just think Essendon are probably going to be going best available with these picks, even though both of these guys kind of fit their team, so I like that for them. With pick number 10 though, I've got the Melbourne Demons selecting Josh Lindseay, who is ranked 11. A lot of people really like Josh Lindseay and believe he could be a top 5 pick in this year's draft. Really good halfback who has awesome foot skills. Probably the best player who kicks out in this draft, you know, along with Dersma as well. Lindseay's 183 centimeter, classy left footer who was a consistent member of every side he played in this year, with Lindseay enjoying some key moments early in the season with the AFL Academy and also Vic Country, where he was co-captain. Lindseay can distribute the ball off half-back and also play up the ground as well, where you see things unfold nicely. I feel like Melbourne have had that hole off their half-back line since Angus Brayshaw unfortunately retired from Braden Maynard's freaking elbow. It's like they could be really using a distributor off there. They found some guys here and there, none of them as clever as what an Angus Brayshaw was for them overall. But I think this could be a player they, of course, decide to target and one that they 100% look at. Again, it will be interesting to see where Melbourne's direction's going to go on this year's draft. But it is good for them now. They do have some high picks. But starting off with pick 11, the Melbourne Football Club, I have them selecting Harry Dean, which does get matched by the Carlton Football Club, meaning that I believe Carlton will be losing pick 13. Obviously, a couple picks later. Again, Harry Dean, as a father-son to Carlton, is a really, really good key defender prospect that I certainly believe Melbourne are going to try and bid on, especially considering Stephen May is... Well, they wanted him out of the door for starters. You know, Jake Levers, another guy that they almost pushed out of the door. They have a very aging back line, and I think they'll put a bid in here and test their luck. It's obviously not going to work, though, because Carlton are 100% going to match this, as they could really use another key defender. And Harry Dean is a 194 centimeter tall defender who would ultimately be perfect for them as a second option to put alongside Jacob Wiedering, and a guy down there who they're going to hope in a couple years... Who the hell is texting me? They're going to hope in a couple years this guy eventually maybe even develops into being the main man. So Harry Dean is a surefire selection for Melbourne, I believe, but a surefire match by Carlton here. I can't see how they wouldn't do this, and he's another guy who's going to come in now and hopefully that for them replace kind of a little bit of a hole that Jack Silvani's going to be leaving, as he had a surprisingly really good year, I think, this most recent season for Carlton. So Harry Dean comes in as another key defender for Carlton, which does put the Melbourne Demons back on the clock. With the 12th overall pick, though, I do have them selecting Sam Grill. Of course, the guy you know, if you guys have been watching the channel for a little bit now, probably know I'm pretty hype on the 182 centimeter inside midfielder slash halfback. Would absolutely be a perfect fit for this Melbourne midfielder. Perfect fit to go alongside a Harvey Langford. You know, he adds that burst from the stoppage, the speed that I believe they could 100% be looking at and trying to use in there as well. It also does have the prospect to be a dual position type of player, with some teams even believing he may start off as a halfback in the game, which we know Melbourne could definitely use as well. He's actually being compared to a younger Chris Judd and a current day Max Holmes, who also started his career off as a halfback for Geelong. This has been proven that he can play both. Richmond actually tested this out when they played him as a halfback in their VFL team, and he even went on as far as dominating the number 2 ranked prospect Zeke Yuland when the Tigers played the Gold Coast Suns. So he very much showed what he can do there. Melbourne will obviously, in an ideal world, see him as a midfielder, may start him off as a halfback. I really like that one for them, and I think that's the direction they might, of course, look to go. At pick 13, though, I have the Hawthorn Football Club selecting Oliver Greavves, a man that they have been in love with for a long time, really trying to get him to be an NGA prospect academy player for them. Of course, the AFL denied that bid, and he went on to continue to play for the Eastern Rangers and has no affiliation really with Hawthorn at all. But I believe the Hawks are still really interested in him. I think they could really use him as a player. 191 centimeter guy who's a really tall inside midfielder who can also push forward. Actually had a 4-goal, 30-plus disposal game, I believe, for the Eastern Rangers in the prelim. Insane stuff. I think is a very promising prospect. Also kicked a goal and was one of the best on for the Eastern Rangers in the grand final as well. A proven player who can come in and add some really nice depth to this Hawthorn team. Can actually give Hawthorn fans a reason to be happy after missing out on Zach Merritt. At least, though, they can get a really good, young, promising player in a Oliver Greavves here. Where else they wouldn't have been able to get him if they, of course, did bring in Zach Merritt, as they would have parted ways with this pick. At number 14, though, we've got Carlton back on the board, where I do have them selecting Locky Doverson, the 178 centimeter small forward who has been compared to a bit of a taller Nick Watson. You know, I've spoken about this on the channel a couple times now, but whether you're a Carlton fan or whether you're not, when you did watch Carlton's football club, you know, their forward line for a lot of the year, and you watch their small forwards operate, it did make you want to jump off the biggest bridge in Melbourne. And I wasn't even a Carlton fan, and that's what it made me want to do. You know, I don't think that Motlop is much. I don't think he will be the future for them. I mean, Francis Evans was pretty booty cheeks for most of the year and then turned to prime LeBron in the last couple games. We'll see if he can carry that on. Really, though, not a whole lot going on with their small forwards. They made this a point of emphasis to improve, though, in the off-season, bringing in Ben Ainsworth, who was a goal-kicking option. But now I think it's time to bring in the speed and bring in the flair, which a Locky Doverson can do. And I think he's honestly a very good option to maybe look at here if you are Carlton. And yeah, you bring in a key defender, you bring in a small forward. That's a very good draft, I think, for Carlton, and they'll be pretty happy with that. At pick 15, though, I have the Giants selecting Javon Filippo. I think that they would have been a really big fan of Locky Doverson, and quite unfortunate here that they're not going to be able to select him because Carlton are taking him. But Javon Filippo is still a pretty good option as a forward player, 183 centimeters, who can put on some pressure. You know, his brother plays for the Saints, who has been shown that he could be a guy who's a potential prospect in the midfield for them. He's working on that. He had a lot of injuries this year, but that's where it looks like his career is heading. I think Filippo could be the same. Starts off as a forward, which they could desperately need, especially while Darcy Jones is out with the ACL. Filippo starts off as a forward, maybe develops into being a guy who can pinch hit in the midfield. Very similar to what Toby Green's done throughout his career as well. Green definitely getting up there in age. Could be a young guy who could they see as a short-term replacement for Darcy Jones. Long-term replacement of a Toby Green maybe. That's why I kind of like this selection for them. You know, they unfortunately couldn't get Doverson, but this feels like the next best option, so I kind of like that. With pick 16 though, I've got the West Coast Eagles selecting Max King, which gets matched by the Sydney Swans. Max King, a 191 to 192 centimeter inside midfielder slash key forward option now. Played, I believe, the first half of the year as like that midfielder, moved on and played as a forward. I genuinely believe now, looking back at it, maybe that the reason he started playing as a forward option was to give something, you know, to give Sydney something to look at. Because when you think about it, it was a massive risk for the Swans to part ways with Will Hayward, who has been a top 3 high half forward in the game now for I think a couple of years. They parted ways with him, bringing in the number 1 key forward in Charlie Curnow, but probably thinking that Max King could be the long-term replacement of a Will Hayward, as he's only a couple centimeters taller, could play a very, very similar role. And I mean, to have the options of all of those key forwards with a guy like Max King could be the 3rd or 4th option as that Will Hayward type of player is really interesting. I think West Coast will look at this pick as well. They need a taller inside midfielder, which he can play. They probably need that high half forward option too as well, which Max King can also play. That's probably the direction on where I think West Coast would overall be going with this if they were to try and pick him. Don't believe they'll get him though. I think Sydney will match this, and they'll match this quite comfortably. He can do a lot of different things, midfield, forward. So I think he'd be great for them. With pick 17 though, I've got the Eagles selecting the WA product of Jacob Faroh. Of course, the 188 centimeter midfield slash halfback, which says a prospect with real upside who has clubs very interested in the top rungs of the draft. Faroh has come from the clouds to some degree, with his form at the start of the season catching the eyes of scouts before he started to take more strides during Western Australia's Under-18 Championship. At Colts level, the tall halfback slash midfielder averaged 25 disposals and also averaged 18 playing with West Perth senior team. He's a long strider who uses his size in different ways. West Coast could use another midfielder. They could certainly probably use another halfback. They've got Bo Allen in the wings who's coming through to be like that prospect. Adding a guy like Jacob Faroh as a similar type of guy could be interesting. Maybe you have one as the midfielder, one as the halfback. Maybe they can both rotate. I like that proposition. I think you need to get another midfielder in this year's draft though. And with them already getting Willem Dersma, which is 1, I think it'd be good for them to add a second one. And I think Jacob Faroh works as that option. I like that as a prospect. I like that as a player. And he's from WA, which can overall give them more confidence in making this pick happen. With pick 18 though, I have the Western Bulldogs selecting Oscar Taylor, who's a 183 centimeter defender, which I think they could desperately use. I mean, their backline needs work. They kept Buku Khamis, which I think was a great idea. I thought it would have been silly for them to let Buku go to the Carlton Football Club where he requested a trade. I think he can really become a good 3rd tall defender option for them. They played him as some forward, but I don't think that's where they need him to go. But keeping Buku's a promising sign, but you need to bring in a defensive halfback now too, where Taylor definitely is at 183 centimeters. He's got a good 20-meter sprint. He came 2nd in the agility test. He's highlighted his speed and movement. He's pushing up the draft boards through the halfback line. He's got great run. He's got good flair. He's a good defensive product. This makes sense for the Dogs. I can't see them not going with a defender here. I think that would be silly. But I can also see them maybe... You know, I can see them maybe not, because we've said that the Dogs have needed to improve their backline for a long time now. And they'll continue to top up as a forward line or as a midfield and just keep ignoring the backline. So let's hope this year's the year for the Dogs. They finally look at that. With the pick number 19, though, this was originally supposed to be Gold Coast pick, but it's been taken away through academies on, you know, their high selections. So it will be going to Adelaide now, which I do have the Adelaide Football Club selecting Mitch Marsh, who I think is a very good prospect for them. 191 centimeters, who's ranked 17, also from South Australia. You know, I was looking at this pick as a long-term placement as well, because Taylor Walker will be retiring pretty soon. And currently, the Adelaide Football Club have a 3 tall forward lineup, which worked for them during the normal season, didn't so much work for them in the finals. So where I think they could be trending in the future, and whether they go with this could be a little bit of an unknown. This is just how I think it could be. But I genuinely believe with Tex retiring probably either at the end of, you know, next year or whenever, they could go with Fogarty and Thilthorpe as their number 1 and number 2 key forward. Then have a guy like Mitch Marsh as their third option, who plays that high half forward role, who's not too tall where he's a key forward, but not short where he's a small forward or anything like that. He's 191 centimeters. So it'll be that medium forward kind of option that Will Hayward, like I've mentioned earlier, play the Cam Rayner role. You know, he's a little bit taller than them, but that's what they'll probably look at him to do. And if shit hits the fan and Adelaide truly need a third key option, they've got Daniel Curtin there as well, who can play wing, he can play midfield, he can play freaking key back, he can play key forward, bloke can play legitimately everywhere. So that's how I think their future will look. They'd probably start those 2 key forwards, have a Mitch Marsh as a third option. That's what I think, and that's why I believe they'll draft him. SA product as well, so that also makes a ton of sense for them. With pick 20, though, this is also supposed to be a Gold Coast pick or a Brisbane Lions pick, but I don't have either of them having this pick now, with this pick being taken away through academy matching, with the Gold Coast Suns in the top 10 and, you know, Daniel Annibal in the top 10 as well. They'll have to match all of those guys. They're going to lose these picks. Leaving pick 20 to go to Geelong, who I kind of struggled with. I didn't really know who to pick here, but considering I feel like Jeremy Cameron's getting up there in age, you know, they finally found another key forward option in Shannon Neal. But I do think they might want to go, you know, and get a young key forward to develop in while Cameron's still around. I think Aiden Schobert, who is like ranked pick 10 at this point, ranked pick 11, would be a good prospect. Typical Geelong, getting a steal at pick 20 here. 197 key forward, I think could really come in, develop in the ranks, and be a good prospect to have behind Jeremy Cameron and Shannon Neal. When Cameron goes on a retire, you can have Neal and you can have Schobert going through the ranks, and I think that's what they could honestly be trying to look at. But of course, I'd very much love to know all your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all those AFL content and AFL news. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts and opinions on my 2025 AFL mock draft. Would you like to see more videos on this and whatnot? I'm trying to upload daily with this draft content, so definitely let me know thoughts and opinions on my picks down below. Subscribe to the channel for all the latest AFL content and AFL news. My gaming/movie channel, if you haven't checked out, will also be linked down below. Go and give my Instagram a follow too if you haven't already. All of them linked down below. But yeah, as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.